was a bummer of a game. I'll say it. I'll start right there. That was a bummer of a game because Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys that when he gets injured, it affects the entire league and it affects the entire viewing of the league. Primetime games coming up for the Chiefs. The AFC West is different. It all stinks.
He's got that ankle injury already going into last night's game, and there were indications that the ankle injury was bothering him. He'd been hobbled in each of the last two games, and he was a different guy when he wasn't able to fluidly and effortlessly run around and look for guys and just whip the ball out whenever he saw an opening. And there was a concern on a short week that the ankle was going to be a problem, and then lo and behold, it ends up being a knee injury. 4th and 1 from about the 5-yard line, 10 minutes left in the second quarter. Plunges into the middle of the line of scrimmage on a called quarterback sneak. And at first, there was no indication anything was wrong, and then all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, Patrick Mahomes is injured, helmet's off, he's holding his head, he looked scared, they had the cart out, and then he decided, I am walking off. Now, you could see that they kind of popped the knee cap back into place. So, and you know, the question is this. X-ray's negative, fine. MRI is what's going to tell the picture here because the movement of that kneecap is going to potentially screw up some of the stuff inside of the knee, cartilage and ligaments and other things. And that's what we will learn today, how long he's going to be out. But you know what? The indications aren't nearly as dire, Big Cat, as I thought they were going to be based upon everything that unfolded in real time.
Okay, Mike, so that's a perfect way to jump off in a discussion I wanted to have with you. The indications are that it's not dire and that he could be back in 3 to 4 weeks. I think I saw a report that Matt Stafford had a similar injury in 2009. He was back in 3 weeks. If you look at the Chiefs' schedule, they have their bye week in 5 weeks, so they could basically kind of, if they can figure out a way to go 2-2 here in the next 4 games, you can steal Patrick Mahomes 6 weeks, so he doesn't have to play till December, December 1st against the Raiders. But with all that said, and knowing the future of the Kansas City Chiefs franchise, and knowing the price they're going to pay for Patrick Mahomes, do you think there is a discussion when it comes to, hey, if this has any chance whatsoever of being an injury that could get worse, he could re-injure it, he could then have to have surgery and miss part of next year. Do you think there's any way that the Chiefs say, we are going to play this as cautious as possible and not even risk it a little bit and make sure that he's 100% healthy for next year and kind of push off this year? You don't, the windows, you got to take advantage when you can, when you have a playoff caliber team, but I think this is an interesting conversation because of the type of player Patrick Mahomes is and because of his age and what he's going to mean for the Chiefs franchise for the next decade plus.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that maybe they should shut him down for the whole year. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, all I'm suggesting is everything I've read about this, and I'm not a doctor, I just play one on TV, but all I'm suggesting is it sounds like he could be back in 3 to 4 weeks. But with being back in 3 to 4 weeks, he's going to have one of those big clunky knee braces, and it's going to be a situation where he can play and the knee's strong, but if he re-injures it, he could be in a lot more trouble going forward, and he then has to get surgery, and now we're talking about bleeding into 2020 season, and we always know guys coming back from knee surgeries, quarterbacks, it always takes a little bit longer than just being on the field. You saw Carson Wentz when he comes back. It's not right away. It's not, oh, he's back, he's 100% healthy, he feels it. It always takes a little bit more, so I'm just wondering if the Chiefs are sitting on Friday morning here in Kansas City and saying, we're going to get this MRI. If it looks like in any way that Patrick Mahomes can re-injure it or get more injured, even if we say he's 100% healthy to come back, do we take the cautious approach?
And you got to flip it over to Mahomes' perspective as well, as a business person. Now, as an athlete, he's going to want to be back on the field. This is a guy who refused the cart ride. He got up. I think he was in denial a little bit, walked off the field, wants to make everyone aware that I'm fine, even if I'm not fine. But from his perspective, business perspective, he should want to wait for the balance of the year and not play again and not take any more risks because the window opens on his second contract as soon as the last regular season game ends. So if you do have concern that there's going to be a re-injury that hovers into the next year, they're not going to want to pay you until they know you're healthy, right? So if you come back and something else happens to that knee, and you do need some sort of season-ending surgery that's going to take 12 months to get back to who you were, there goes that contract that you otherwise would get in February or March. So, and I don't know that Mahomes would stand for that. I think he's still young enough and brash enough and confident enough in his abilities that he can come back and he can play and not re-injure it. But it's a valid point from both the team perspective and the player perspective. There's an argument to be made that we just make chicken salad out of Matt Moore or whoever else we can find, and we go forward, and we hope that our defense can play like it did last night, and we hope that we can get Matt Moore to the point where he can at least be something, maybe Alex Smith light, not necessarily Patrick Mahomes Jr., but somebody who can move the offense, who knows the offense, who's been there. I see where you're coming from. But, Andy Reid, this is the year Andy Reid was going to win the Super Bowl finally. I mean, from his perspective, he's got to be thinking, let's just roll the dice. I don't know how many more of these trips around the sun I'm going to have as a head coach. I don't want to put an expiration date on his life. I'm just saying I don't know how many more years he plans on coaching. This is an opportunity to build on what they've done last year and this year and try to get to the Super Bowl. So there's going to be some tension there as to whether they continue to go all in for this year or play it safe for next year and beyond.
Right, because, with the way medicine works, with the way doctors work, with the way knee injuries work, we're not saying that Patrick Mahomes, maybe 20 years ago, you're like, okay, well, this could be career-altering. It's not going to be career-altering, but it's kind of one of those equations you have to figure out in your head that if Patrick Mahomes comes back this year, okay, you're back in the playoffs, you're competing for a Super Bowl, potentially, but again, if Patrick Mahomes is wearing a huge, bulky knee brace, is he going to be the same guy? Or do you say, hey, this could then bleed into next year if he gets re-injured, so we're not only punting on this year, but we're punting on next year as well, because that's the doomsday scenario here. That Patrick Mahomes comes back in December and gets really re-injured, and now you're looking at surgery, and now you're looking at 2020 getting affected, and now you're going 2 years down the line of this window that the Chiefs have, and it should be a big window, because if there's one thing that we've learned in the NFL is that quarterbacks can keep a window open for years and years and years. Look at the Patriots, look at the Packers, the teams that basically have completely different rosters, guys that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers weren't playing with 10 years ago. It's all different. It's all new. So Patrick Mahomes has that type of special talent where you can say if he is healthy, the Chiefs will be in the playoffs the next 15 years. So why would you risk anything with that when you know that that's what you have in front of you? Mike, the other thing I wanted to throw out there. So you mentioned Matt Moore. Do you think that the Chiefs will trade for Eli Manning? Because that seems to be the go-to trade piece that everyone wants to throw out there. Why not trade for Eli?
Well, we tried to identify their options at this point. There aren't many free agents out there. Just look at the XFL quarterback depth charts, and you realize there aren't many good quarterbacks out there. Colin Kaepernick, at this point, the ship has sailed. So trade window's still open. Well,
Jay Cutler?
Like I said, trade window's still open, though. A few years ago, the window would have been closed. It used to close the Tuesday after Week 6. They still have a week and a half to do something. And, yes, Eli Manning's out there. He's got a no-trade clause. But if I'm Eli Manning, I'd rather go somewhere where I play than somewhere where I don't play. He looked so miserable sitting on the bench last week in that Thursday night game the Giants played at New England. And another guy to keep in mind, how about Marcus Mariota? Benched in Tennessee, and he went into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs in a playoff game a couple of years ago. I mean, the cupboard is largely bare when it comes to available quarterbacks. If the Titans have decided they're done with Marcus Mariota, why not take advantage of a team that may be desperate enough to take Mariota for the balance of his rookie contract as the guy who fills in for Patrick Mahomes? And if they would make a move like that, Big Cat, that tells me they are seriously considering shutting Patrick Mahomes down for the year. They're just going to turn it over to Mariota. Let's do what we can here. And next year it's Mahomes and Mariota walks away. Maybe he stays as the backup if no one else offers him a starting job. But it'd be a great opportunity for Mariota because, number one, he'd be playing, and number two, he'd be with a coach who can get the most out of him to the point where he would be attractive next year as a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I actually don't hate that. You say a lot of dumb things, but that one wasn't one of them. So I actually kind of like that idea out there. By the way, the Titans beat the Chiefs in Kansas City 2 years ago, or was it 2 years ago? I lost on that game. If Travis Kelce doesn't get a concussion, that game doesn't go that way. I think we can all agree on that.
That was the game Mariota threw a touchdown pass to himself, wasn't it?
Yes. But Travis Kelce getting concussed in that game changed the scope of the game, and that was a weird one because that was. The Bears then hired Matt Nagy after watching him kind of blow the second half of that game, and the Chiefs completely lost everything on offense. But I like that idea. I think that's not a terrible one. You're right. There's not a lot of quarterbacks out there. It's just going to be the way the schedule works out, looking at what the Chiefs have in front of them, they just got to figure out a way that if they can tread water for the 2-2, because they have tough games coming up. They have the Packers and the Vikings, and then they have the Chargers the Titans and the Chargers. So if you can figure out a way to go 2-2 there, maybe win one of those Packers-Vikings games, you're sitting at 7-4. Patrick Mahomes has now had 6 weeks off. He's ready to go for December stretch. Maybe that works, but man, I know if I was sitting there today and I was, general manager, the owner, whatever it may be for the Chiefs, I would take a good, long, hard look at what the ramifications of Patrick Mahomes coming back is. And if the doctor tells me that, this is a situation where he needs surgery, but he can elect to not have surgery and play the remainder of this year, and there's that risk that he could get re-injured and it could be worse, I don't know if I'm taking that risk, to be totally honest with you, because he is that type of special player, and you want him to be healthy going forward for the rest of his career and not have something derail this whole thing, because that would be a real tragedy.
Last minute before we take a break, I want to ask you this. Do you have a problem with the decision to run a quarterback sneak with a guy who had a bad ankle right into that wall of all those large human beings?
No, this is... How many times do we sit here and tell coaches that they're stupid for not running a quarterback sneak? This happens one time. Patrick Mahomes got injured last week or 2 weeks ago against the Colts by just throwing the ball in the pocket. Injuries happen in the NFL. I don't think if you're ever going to coach from the perspective of we don't want to do this because an injury could happen, well, then you don't want to do anything. You might as well just punt it on first down. Seriously, that was the right play call. Of course, there will be some stupid coaches out there that get deterred from using their quarterback for a quarterback sneak. But the quarterback sneak works almost every time. Do you think that Tom Brady is going to stop quarterback sneaking because Patrick Mahomes got hurt? Like that's if there was ever a lesson to why you should quarterback sneak on 4th and inches, just look at what Tom Brady's been doing for the last 20 years. It's insane.
There was a stretch where he wasn't doing it, but like last Thursday night, he did it 17 times. And I couldn't help but wonder whether or not what he did last Thursday night, where he had multiple quarterback sneaks, did that influence other coaches to say, yeah, we need to do this more often? But I tend to agree with you. Injuries can happen anywhere, anytime, any place. But Patrick Mahomes did come into that game with a bad ankle, and we all thought when he was down on the ground that it was the ankle until we saw the magical shifting kneecap, and we hope that he's going to be fine. We'll be updating at ProFootballTalk.com all day long the Mahomes injury and what his status is. We're going to take a break, though. When we return, I want to talk about last night's game from the Broncos' perspective, because I think they came into the game with the right game plan, but once Mahomes went out, they saw an opening, and they just tripped over their own 2 feet.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.